Hey everybody, Neil Malik from Knack Training here, bringing you another everyday office video. And in today's video, I want to demonstrate how the new dynamic array functions can help us build dynamic cascading drop-down menus. There are 4 techniques that I'm going to use in this video that are fairly brand new as far as your use of Excel is concerned, and I'd like to illustrate each of those. So over here in columns J through N, the idea is that I will make drop-down menus where I can choose any facility I want. But when I choose a facility like Brandeis, for example, I will only be able to choose the buildings that are at the Brandeis facility. And when I choose building B from the Brandeis facility, then I'll only be able to choose areas that exist in building B. And once I choose an area, then I'll only be able to choose an aisle that exists in that area, and so on and so forth. This concept is called a cascading drop-down menu, where the building drop-down menu plays off of the facility drop-down menu. Whatever you choose here affects what you see here. Now, in order to make these drop-down menus, I need to make the lists, and this is where the dynamic array functions come into play. If you have Office 365 and you're on the monthly subscription now, you have, on the Formulas tab at the top of the screen, under the Lookup and Reference areas, you have functions called Filter and Unique. Those are the 2 functions I'll be using in this video. There are also Sort and Sort By. There's the Rand Array function, and there's also the Sequence function. But we'll be using Filter and we'll be using Unique. So let's start off with creating a list, a unique list of all the facilities that are in this table. Now, as you can see over here on the left, this is a table. The table's name is TBL Inventory, and what I'd like is a unique list of every facility. Fairly straightforward. I'll go over here to the P column, to P2. I'll use the Formulas tab, use the Lookup and Reference drop-down menu, and I want a, once again, unique list. So I go to the new unique function. Click on unique. It says, where is your array of cells where you'd like to have unique values come from? And in this case, it happens to be TBL inventory, and then the square brackets here around the facility column. And now I don't have to fill out the rest of this because this would be if I were looking for the full table and bringing back the buildings and the areas and which column I wanted to see and everything else. But as you can see here, basically what I'm doing is I'm saying go to the facility column and give me a unique list of all the facilities. And when I click OK, see how it outlines the rest of this? This is what we call a spilling function, where it just goes down as long as it needs to until it runs out of all of your different facilities. Now, if you notice over here, this, if I click on Brookmore or Cascadia, these functions are grayed out, and I cannot actually make edits to those. Notice here, I can't go up here and fix that, because what it's saying here is that whatever I did in Brandeis, which is not grayed out, this is going to be carried over for the rest of the facilities. Now here's the second thing that we haven't done until there are dynamic array functions. In the same way that we just spilled all the facilities, and I'm not sure how many facilities there will be, how am I ever going to tell the drop-down menu where all the facilities are? Well, it's really amazing now. There is a new way of referencing cells when we're using dynamic arrays. I'll go here to cell J2, go to the Data tab at the top of the screen, and click on to Data Validation. Now, Data Validation is going to allow me to choose a list of possible options. Now, you know that the list of possible options that I want for the facility drop-down menu is this list right over here. And typically what I would do is select from P2 to whatever, but now watch this structure. Equal sign, P2, pound sign. And what that does is it informs Excel, hey, if you look at cell P2, you'll notice that there is a function that's going to spill down from cell P2. I don't know how far it's going to go, but keep going as long as it goes. And when I hit OK, sure enough, there is now a unique list on the drop-down menu here, for instance, if I choose Brookmore. Now, if I choose Brookmore, I would like it to be able to go over here, find Brookmore, and not only find that Brookmore has buildings A and B and no other buildings, but again, filter it down, create a unique list from that. So I'm going to use two functions here. The first function is going to be the filter function. If I go to cell R2, I'm not going to use the formulas drop-down menu for this one. Instead, I'll go straight to cell R2 and do =, filter. Notice here it says, okay, what is the array that you're talking about? Well, the array that I'm talking about is, once again, TBL inventory, and specifically I'm looking for the list of buildings, so square brackets, building. Close the square brackets. Now, how am I going to tell it about this filter? The way that we tell it about this filter is by telling it the column that we're interested in and the criteria that we're interested in. So after the comma here, the include function looks like this: TBL inventory, square brackets, facility, close the square brackets. Okay, so look at the building column and pull back all the buildings where the facility is equal to, and then I'll just click here on Brookmore, and that's that. Now the last part is, what if there are no Brookmore buildings? Or what if you're looking for a facility and it doesn't even exist in the first place? If it's empty, let's just do 2 quotation marks here and close the parentheses. And now what you see here is building A, building A, building A, building B, building B, building B. So what we have to do is go back to this filter function right here and just type in unique around it. Whoops, unique. There we go. Unique around that, and we're all set. So filter, so we only see building A and building B, and then create a unique list of that. When I hit enter here, you see there's building A and building B. And so now if I go over here to cell K2, I'm going to use the same feature I used earlier. Go to the Data tab, go to Data Validation, and choose to allow a list. And the source of this list is, again, =R2, #, hashtag, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's technically called an octothorpe, actually. I'll hit OK. And the drop-down menu has building A and building B on it. But when I choose that the facility is now Cascadia, again, we see the unique list over here has changed, and we see that the drop-down menu has all the options on it. So I'll choose building D from the drop-down. Now you might assume that from here it just keeps going with the exact same functionality, but there is an interesting twist at this point in the process. When we get to areas, I want you to think about this. I can't just filter the areas based on the areas that exist in building A, because there are lots of building A's at the different facilities. So I have to filter by 2 criteria in the filter function. Here's how we make that happen. So once again, we start with =, unique. Unique, maybe I can spell it. There we go. Unique needs to wrap around whatever we decide to do, so it's a unique list of those entries. And in here, we're going to filter using the filter function, and we are concerned with TBL inventory, square brackets, area. Okay, so that's our first step. We are filtering down the area column. How are we filtering it? Well, we need to say that the building has to be building D and that the facility has to be Cascadia. If you've never used the sum product function before, you may have never run into this, but there is a functionality with arrays that looks a little bit like this. If something is true, it's a 1, and if it's false, it's a 0. And so if you want 2 things to be true, in order for something to be true, well, if you multiply 1 times 1, you get 1, so it's still true. If you multiply 1 times 0, on the other hand, you get 0, and of course 0 times 0 gives you 0. So in order to filter by 2 criteria at the same time for them to both be true, what we do is we do 2 sets of criteria, and we multiply them together. And that allows us to determine whether something is true or not. So we do open parentheses here, and the first thing we'll look for is the facility. TBL inventory, square bracket facility, needs to be equal to Cascadia, close parentheses. So that will either return a 0 or a 1. And then we multiply by something in the parentheses. This will be TBL inventory, square brackets building, close the square brackets, is equal to K2, and close the parentheses. And so again, if the facility is true but the building is false, it'll be false. If the facility is false but the building is true, it'll be false. It has to have both the facility and the building being true simultaneously. Comma, what do we want to do if you don't find any matches? 2 quotation marks, close the parentheses, close the parentheses. And just like that, these are all the areas in building D of the Cascadia facility. If I look at building F of the Cascadia facility, or if I look at building F of Hammermill, or if I look at building H of Hammermill, or here, let me go back to something that doesn't exist. Brookmore does not have a building H. So when I choose Brookmore, you see here that my areas is now empty. And the only thing that I would consider doing here is, as you can see, it does not automatically change cell K2. So I'm going to add a little bit of conditional formatting here. I'll go up to my Home tab at the top of the screen, click on Conditional Formatting, and make a new rule. And what the rule is I want to color code this so that building H turns red and italics if it doesn't exist in the R column. So go here to use a formula to determine which cells to format. And what I'll do is I'll say if the count of building H in the R setup is equal to 0, well, then we want to make sure that that color codes, right? So we'll use equal sign count if. We'll look for the building H in, remember here, R2 pound sign, greater, let's do equal to 0, right? So count if K2 is not in the R2 area, then go ahead and color code this. I will format this. We'll make it italics and make the font color into red and hit OK. And hit OK. And there it is. Brookmore does not have building H, so it turns red. But it does have building A, so it's no longer red, and you can see here that this function updates. And so it would go on and on and on like this, right? For aisles, I would have to say, if the area exists in the T column, and the building exists in the R column, and the facility exists in the P column, etc., 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 all the way down the line. So let's look at some of those new techniques that we picked up here using the dynamic array functions. First one, the unique function. The unique function looks at a list and gives you the unique values back. Very simple to use. There's not a whole lot of moving parts there. Very helpful. The second is that the filter function, together with the unique function, can give you all of the matching elements for a particular facility. And the third is that if we need to do 2 separate sets of criteria, then we multiply those 2 criteria together because a true value is the same thing as the number 1. And finally, anytime we want to use these lists, we remember that on the Data tab inside of Data Validation, we can reference these by the first cell that the function has, plus a pound sign, hashtag, octothorpe, whatever, immediately after that address.